I decided to take a couple of pivots in my career, and I stopped trying to be selling myself to what other people wanted and instead said, here's who I am, here's what I offer. I have great confidence in that. I don't know everything, but here's what I do know I can bring to the table.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, anxiety melts away.
I don't think I know that many people who have not been unemployed as millennials. You know, like people have struggled to find work in a way that is so mass and is so like widespread that it's so interesting because I think I've lost all judgment for anybody's path.
But the best way to be successful is learning how to stop trying to tell a story that checks other people's boxes and instead tell a story that truly is your own.
Yeah.
The amount of confidence and understanding your own brand and how you're selling that.
But you were important to me at the time, you know, and you were somebody that was like a mentor to me, especially in getting into the RA job and, you know, all of that, because we were RAs together. So we should explain to the people, we are Ben and Alyssa, and we are
Alyssa, 15 years strong.
15 years strong. We are doing this podcasting project to talk about our professional careers, the expectations versus realities of being millennials in the workplace. Growing up, we both grew up in California. We both moved to New York City in the 20, what do you call it? The 2015s, 2020s.
2010s era. Yeah.
Yes. And we have experienced a lot in our lives, a lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of turnarounds, layoffs, you know, businesses, coaching, you know, we've gone through the roller coaster of being people and professionals and relationship people and we are here and we just want to talk about it. Like we just want to be people and talk about our relationship to our professional selves, I think is kind of how I would frame it.
Yeah, I think in this era of self-reflection, this is a big conversation, not just between us as friends, but we both have small businesses and we both have communities in New York where we mentor and network. And I think I was also seeing several articles lately about the same dialogue, right? I think some people call it the millennial burnout. I
Yeah.
don't want to call it burnout. I
Yeah.
think it's like self-discovery period, and a reclaiming. I think we all entered college and the job market, being promised certain things, and if you, like, kept your head down and you worked hard, you would climb a ladder and get certain things at certain points in that success path,
Yeah.
and, the whole world changed, and it didn't quite work out that way for us, so, like, I
Yeah.
think it's a crazy thing to watch our ambition together over the last 15 years, where that led us, and also how many times we got knocked off of our feet, right? And, like, life told us we have to figure things out a different way,
Yeah.
So I'm excited to kind of talk about it and talk about expectations versus reality.
I know. So let's talk about our expectations. Like what did we, because when we say like we were promised things, it's funny because we were. And it was also just like an expectation. It was just like, oh, if you find a knack for something in high school and then you take one class and then you study that in college and then you know, go and pursue that thing, then you're just going to kind of have this career. And I remember being little and people being like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like you can be whatever you want to be when you grow up. And like, if you just kind of like get into this trajectory, then you're going to like succeed and you'll get where you need to go and all of that. And it has just not completely been that way. It has been so much less linear than I expected it to be, I would say.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I know it's almost a little cliche, right? Because everyone tells you when you're younger, "Oh, life doesn't work on this specific path," but it's not that you listen to it. Yeah, and I think the expectation was, especially gosh, I graduated school in, like, '09.
Mm,
I I think the expectation was, yeah, go to college. If you get a degree, you're guaranteed a good job,
mm,
which will, based on cost of living, let
mm.
you, save money and achieve certain things, and, you know this, I didn't come from much, I came from a very low income situation and nobody in my family had gone to college. So I thought I was extra on this path where I was going to change everything. And I look forward to today, and I did change everything, but I thought it would end up looking very different than the way it looks now, and I love my life now, I'm very grateful for that, but I think you don't really know what you're getting into when you go to college other than, "This is the thing I'm supposed to be doing, so I'm gonna keep doing it," and that's the decision framework that made me go to grad school and then
Mhm,
pushed me into the tech space and the job market,
mhm.
so I think the expectation was you check these boxes, there is a return on investment guaranteed. And somewhere in our generation, that return on investment, disappeared.
I think for me, it's like I remember when I was a kid, if somebody was unemployed, it was like, "Oh my god, what are they doing?" They are like there was this connotation that they were, unemployed and they were sitting on the couch, reading the newspaper, eating peanut butter in their pajamas and their robes and just like they're kinda lazy and whatever. And then I became unemployed twice in my adult life, and my perception of unemployment overall just completely changed, and I think that's like the pinnacle of my
Mm,
expectation versus reality is like I don't think I know anybody, maybe I do, but, like, I don't think I know that many people who have not been unemployed as millennials, like, people have struggled to find work in a way that is so mass and is so, like, widespread that it's so interesting because I think I've lost all judgment for anybody's path, and I think people take jobs because they just need jobs, and I think people, follow paths because they need security, and I think there's people who find themselves at our age very unsatisfied with where they are and where they've ended up. And I remember when I turned 30, 30 or 31, I went home to California and I was having lunches with my like a few college friends and a few high school friends, like one on one. And I'm like, how's it going? Like, how's your career? Like, what's going on? And my best example is a friend who's a dental hygienist. And I was talking to her and I was like, how's it going? Like, what are you enjoying about your job and whatever? And she was like, I just think I don't like working in people's mouths. And she had spent her whole 20s, like, getting up to being a dental hygienist, and she had, just, like, worked toward it, and she felt like she was promised an ROI on something, and then she just not enjoying it. So now she's feeling like, "What's my next path? Where am I going? Like, how can I possibly restart at age 33 or whatever age?" And I remember I had a conversation with you about that too, like, just generally, like,
mm,
2 or 3 years ago, just being like, "What is happening?" And I think that is we all kind of reached that point. And then I personally, I was working at a training company and I left that job and I ended up spending 2 years just trying to build my own business because I was like, I can't rely on a corporate America. I don't fit in. I don't like, there's nothing for me there. I have to start my own business. And now I found myself
mm,
years later at a company that I very luckily found myself in a very specific position that uses my strengths and talents. But, like, even my mentality now is like, "It's good while it lasts," you know?
yeah,
So, like,
yeah.
we'll see.
I wanna call out that, like, word rely.
Mm,
I think, when we talk about the pressure and the ROI of going to college and getting a degree and then getting out in the job market, we were, told to expect that from generations of folks that didn't have the same pressures and volatility in their job experience, because technology was even different, right? The evolution of technology was different. So, like, there's entire generations of people who were able to rely on their careers, rely on the security of a job. And I think the first thing our generation figured out was there was no more relying, right? As we saw people get hit with the first waves of layoffs in the early 2010s, right? You can compare that to the dot com boom in the early 2000s and the bubble burst, right? But sometimes I wonder, like, why didn't we take away more knowledge from that and how we're setting expectations for the next, like, 10 years of how the job market would work, right? Like, there was a big lesson there. I'm not sure that, like, the career industry took away and,
Yeah.
like, saw the way that it's, like, very closely monitoring AI now, which is interesting. Like, I think hopefully we've learned a little bit to pay more attention, but it's like, this startup world and culture really took off in the 2010s, especially around 2015, and everybody was like, "Well, it's so great. There's games in the office,
Yeah.
so of course I have a secure job." Right? This has
Right.
become a home for me because there's nap pods and
Mhm.
snacks and
Mm.
I'm going to work as hard as I can. And that hard work means I have job security. And I think the last decade, a lot of us have learned that it doesn't matter how much work you put into a job, it doesn't guarantee security.
And it's funny because I have also learned from the other side, from like a business's side, it's really not their responsibility to give you a home. Like they're a like if somebody
Yeah.
starts a business, like their only purpose is to make money. Like yeah, they want to provide something to somebody that doesn't have it, or they want to fill a place in the market or whatever. But at the end of the day, like I've learned just I think going into my first job, I was like, oh yeah, we all have jobs and we get we make our friends there and we'll be able to do
Mhm.
this, be able to do that. And, looking at my parents' jobs, my mom was a teacher and my dad was an accountant before they retired recently. And they got a lot out of their 30-year careers, like they made their friends there. Like all of I would say almost all of my dad's friends are from his work. And like he would get, a 10-year anniversary present and a 20-year anniversary present, and then he retires, and it's, like, with the same company the whole time, and, like, I
An
will
era that is
say
no longer a
yeah,
thing,
and I will say,
right?
like, throughout his career, there were moments where they would offer packages to, leave the company or, people did get laid off. It's not like layoffs are a brand new thing in the world, but, like, the
Right.
consistency, the, like, expectation that it probably just will happen at some point for myself is how I personally feel. But then, the funny thing is just, like, I think when I got laid off from ClassPass, which was my first job, and first job out of college, and I had 5 years at the company. I People were, like, really surprised that I got laid off because I was just a big part of the culture, a big part of the movement, of the success of the company and all of that stuff. And one person called me and he was like, "Yeah, when I found out you got laid off, I was like, oh, they really laid people off." And to me,
Yeah.
it was like I just learned over time that, like, it's really not the point of a business to give you a place to go every day, and make
Yes, yes. Yeah, no, I love that call out. I think there is this, like, and it's part of, the age you enter the job force. At
yeah,
the same time, when we were entering the job market, there was this, like, crazy tech culture going on where it did feel like a community. It did feel like, you know, companies using the word family at work,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is very problematic in
yeah,
my opinion. That's my hot take. But, it's part of us being young and being naive to think that, like, there was a guaranteed security
mhm,
because you're absolutely right. It is a business at the end of the
yeah,
day. So
yeah,
it's like, I think there was like this weird gray area period where, like, all of those boundaries and lines were commingling, and
mhm,
when you're young, you look at that and you go, "Oh, it's security," but being the ages we are now in our mid-30s, we can look at that and go, "Wow, how did we not know it isn't a guarantee of security,"
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Um, and sometimes you have to, like, that's also the cockiness and
mm,
like, that naive era of your 20s, and everything feels so big and like this big drama in your life all the time, right? And so I remember both of us in those early tech careers, just every conversation we were having was about the people we were meeting, the community, but also the same time, like, how do you succeed in a family community environment where you
yeah,
knew that there were layers and challenges, and there was still this business humming behind the scenes, dealing with the ebbs and flows of the economy. And you'd sometimes see your friends or AKA coworkers
yeah,
get cut or churn naturally as well because they were having a very different experience than you were having, and half the time you didn't even realize it, you
Yeah.
know? So I think, like, again, in your 20s, all of life is around your main character narrative, and I think, like, much like watching a sitcom, you think you've got the plot line figured out through the end of the episode,
Yeah.
and I think what you're talking about with, like, what happened with ClassPass and, some of the challenges I saw in my career too, it
Mhm.
just knocks you on your butt quite a
Yeah.
bit, and, like,
Yeah.
I love that though at the same time because, like, although it didn't feel good, like, there is this really humbling thing that happens when life kicks you back
Mhm.
and makes you realize that, like, you don't have control over all of these things, and
Yeah.
you do have to have greater perspective than what's going on in, like, your main character narrative in your head, like,
Yeah.
and you have to actually, like, the beautiful thing of learning that lesson is you have less weight on your shoulders over time
Mhm.
because you realize it isn't all about you and
Mhm.
it isn't personal,
Mhm.
but, like, you have to go through those struggles to realize it, and actually, like, in your 20s, when you have this main character idea, like, it always feels like it's you against the world, you're carrying all this weight on your shoulders, like, you're trying to struggle and succeed all at the same time. But then you fast forward in life and you've gone through these, like, massive challenges, you no longer have that weight on your shoulder, and somehow you're able to be more successful.
That's literally it. It's like, I have found so much that as I've released the expectations from myself to whatever it is, I have become more successful. I am now at it's funny because we talk about, "Oh, in your 20s, you don't have as much money and you're less sure of yourself." Okay, let's take those 2 things. Less money and less sure of yourself. Your 30s, maybe you're a little more sure of yourself. You are potentially making more money depending on your situation. It's not everybody, but I feel like it's so interesting to think about what I thought about something like a personal brand
Mm,
when I was 24 compared to 34. I think
yeah,
now my personal brand is specifically the value that I bring to any company. Like now,
yeah.
instead of my personal brand being red, blue, and yellow, Diet Coke, like the guy
Chicken
going
nuggets.
yeah, it's now I'm like, "Oh, no, my personal brand is so aligned with who I am and my values and how I go about work and how that brings value to a company and how I can explain how it brings value to a company." And it's, like, so different that
Yeah.
in my 2 years of entrepreneurship, like, specifically, like, on my own entrepreneurship, I so now view my job that I have now, like, as an office and events manager, I view that as a service that I'm just providing to the company that I sold them.
Yeah, yeah. What I was gonna say was, we talk about being in your 20s, you're in this, like, I'm the main character narrative, and you think you're driving, but really, like, you're looking towards everything else outside of you for validation, success indicators, you think that you are the main character, but really, like, you're allowing yourself to be defined by all these forces you don't actually control
Mm,
versus, like, you grow up and you go through those challenges, and now being in my mid-30s, I can look at the situation and very similar to what you were saying, I stopped looking elsewhere for that validation, and I became very humble, and in that way, like, I actually became a lot stronger, and once I stopped trying to control the forces outside of my control and I just focused on myself, I became that much more successful. And I
mhm,
talk to a lot of my clients about this in my coaching business too, because, in this really crazy job market right now, everyone is struggling because it's so saturated, right? And the main thing I get asked to help with is helping my candidates tell their story,
right.
right? Because they're so nervous about going into these interviews and saying all the right things, to set themselves apart in such a saturated market. But the funny thing is, and most of the time when I have these sessions and I tell them this, it kind of blows their mind. But the best way to be successful is learning how to stop trying to tell a story that checks other people's boxes and instead tell a story that truly is your own.
Yeah.
The amount of confidence and understanding your own brand and how you're selling that, like you said, in your current position, selling those services, right? That's what actually sets you apart, and it's the same thing in my current job too,
Mm.
like, I decided to take a couple of pivots in my career, and I stopped trying to be selling myself to what other people wanted and instead said, "Here's who I am, here's what I offer, I have great confidence in that, I don't know everything, but here's what I do know I can bring to the table,"
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, anxiety melts away, not to say it's never there, but anxiety melts away because 'cause you're not trying to live up to this image that they want of you. You've sold yourself in that true authentic way, and, like, the happiness from the get-go in that job is insane, and also, like, you're no longer clinging to that job defining you in life or in success, and, like, the ease that comes with that in itself also allows you to be more successful. It's kind of this beautiful, crazy thing, right? Relinquishing control of the things you can't and focusing on what you can, although sounds cliche, is truly the way to win, and win for yourself in the best way possible,
Yeah.
right?
I think that's a good path into the next topic, which is talking about like the lessons that we've learned and like what we
Mm.
would do again if we were to have the opportunity. Why don't we stop there and head to our next episode, which will be out next week, everybody? I'm Ben Hawes,
I'm Alyssa Pizarro.
and we'll see you next week.
I like it.